Welcome to Cortex Signals, Insights on AI from Cortex Reply, hosted by Sanjay Dandeker. Joining him are Senior Delivery and FinOps Lead Alice Keal and AI and FinOps Engineer Charmaine Fong. Together, they discuss how FinOps and AI are transforming the way organizations think about spend, optimization, and business value in FinOps and AI, from cost to value.
Hello and welcome to Cortex Signals. I'm Sanjay Dandeker. I'm a principal consultant with Cortex Reply, and I'm joined today by our very own Alice Keal and Charmaine Fong to talk about FinOps and AI. Hello both. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here.
So shall we start with some introductions? Maybe just tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Alice Keal. I'm a senior delivery consultant at Cortex. I lead our AI and FinOps offerings. So with the past 5 years, I've been helping organisations either scale with cost confidence or just learn how to adopt AI.
And I'm Charmaine. I am an AI engineer / consultant, currently working with quite a mature FinOps team in a global bank. What we do from day to day, I suppose we're going to get into in a moment, but essentially the core of it is managing and optimizing AI at the enterprise scale using core FinOps principles. And yeah, we're going to get into a lot of that today.
So for anyone who might have stumbled across this podcast and doesn't know what FinOps is, can we start by maybe talking about what is FinOps?
Yeah, it's probably good to get that definition out of the way first. So FinOps is a practice that essentially helps organisations to just understand their technology costs and consumption. Typically it was around cloud, but the idea is once you understand how and where your technology or cloud is being consumed, you can then make better decisions on how to spend more wisely. And the whole idea is to actually maximise the value. So before the FinOps community come at me, it is not about cost savings. We're not here to just reduce the cost. That's not the main goal. The whole point of it is it should be a continuous exercise of looking at, like I said, where are we spending so that you can make better value decisions. But the reason it really came about was around in the 2010s. So loads of organisations were adopting cloud, and cloud brought with it these really new ideas and challenges around costs. One of the main ones is that obviously cloud, it's kind of consumption based, so teams weren't able to really predict what the cost would be month to month. But the other idea was that now engineering teams basically have free reign of a credit card. It's so easy for them to spin up resources and just basically purchase at will. So the whole control level also goes when you have cloud. So the reason that FinOps came about was it was going to kind of come in, help people to govern actually where costs come from by doing collaboration. So the whole idea is that engineering, finance and business teams can work together to really understand how best we can make technology investment decisions.
And Charmaine, you mentioned you are currently working within a FinOps team. What does an entire FinOps team do on a day-to-day basis?
So I'd say what Alice said there was spot on. A FinOps team really exists first and foremost to give organization visibility into their technology spend, their cloud spend, and really show who's consuming it and whether they're bringing business values to the business. I would say on a day-to-day, FinOps team mainly focus on analyzing usage patterns. We also try to forecast, future cloud cost demands. But also, most importantly, we try to work with a lot of the engineering teams to really optimize operational efficiencies right at the ground level. I would also say that a really good FinOps team extends beyond that. And they should get involved really early to influence business decisions before money is being spent. Because essentially that is how we can shape organization, make better investment, and make sure that their technology spend is sustainable in the long term. So the client that I'm working with right now, as I've said, is quite a mature FinOps team. What we see is going on there is that the work can range from reporting, cost optimization, but also working with all kinds of stakeholders to strategize.
I think the other thing, absolutely, those are definitely the key characteristics of a FinOps team. But what you've been working in is quite a central FinOps function. I think we should really call out that FinOps doesn't have to be in a centralised team. I'm seeing lots of smaller organisations actually having a more decentralised approach. So, like I said, one of the core principles is this collaboration element. So even if you're a smaller organisation, you can definitely look at, as long as those functions of being able to show back where your costs are coming from, make better decisions and look at how you can optimise it, all of this can definitely be done at a smaller kind of decentralised model too.
Okay, and so in that decentralised model, whose responsibility is FinOps?
It's a really good point, and that will obviously depend on the organisation. But so I've seen it quite typically when you have kind of cloud ops organizations, or maybe in like an enterprise architect space, they're usually quite good at rounding those teams up and understanding, like it's being able to have that understanding of what the business wants, what engineering and architecture teams actually want to do, and knowing kind of the cloud strategy. So it really helps by having some sort of architecture lead. But equally, it's, like I said, it's all about collaboration. And as we see like that technology stack grow, we see that technology actually gets diluted across the organization anyway. So really, everyone should be accountable for knowing how they're using that technology, what the spend is costing them. But as long as, you've got somebody there doing that cost transparency and that, reflection back.
So the FinOps Foundation as well has always been focused on cloud cost optimization, but they recently changed their mission, or they updated their mission to talk about the value of technology. What does that mean, and how does that change things when it comes to FinOps?
Yeah, so that actually happened, like I said, earlier this year, so 2025, 2026. And that's the whole idea of it, is that actually technology is growing. It's no longer just cloud costs that we're having to understand. Organizations, cloud doesn't work in isolation. We're seeing buzzword, but AI is being adopted at a large scale. Data centers now need to be considered. SaaS solutions, software licensing, on-prem, there's so much more technology. And so it shouldn't just be a case of let's just focus on the cloud side of it. We should actually be looking at technology as a whole and making sure that we can understand that full cost, because especially when we start looking at AI solutions, and we'll come on to, I'm sure without no doubt, onto AI, but we should really be thinking about actually the AI solution as a whole and all those different layers, because if you just look at the cloud, there's going to be costs accumulating somewhere much further down the line.
How AI fundamentally differs from cloud is that the billing structure and consumption model, as Alice said, is fundamentally different. And basically, the cost drivers is no longer just infrastructure. We're introducing completely new cost drivers that varies between model selection, your use case complexity, as well as token consumption as well. So those are really new concepts to FinOps. And these things combined make it really hard to track cost. So managing AI cost really does require that day one insight. And another challenge that we've definitely noticed is optimizing AI is quite hard after, solutions are deployed compared to traditional FinOps. So gone are days when we could just optimize infrastructure costs with a click of a button, just downsizing instance, for example. As FinOps practitioner now, we really have to be on the front foot, I think, and we have to move much faster and earlier into the AI solution and deployment lifecycle when we're really trying to manage the cost.
Some of the areas when you talk about FinOps, and we've touched on AI now, so I'll ask this question, is I've heard these terms, FinOps for AI and AI for FinOps. Are they the same thing, or are they substantially different? Can you help explain them, please?
Great question. It's probably one of my biggest bugbears of people just using these interchangeably. The really simple way to put it. So FinOps for AI is kind of the same as FinOps for cloud, FinOps for on-prem. It's the idea that you take these practices and principles and you use it to apply to AI solutions. So how do you govern, optimize, and get the value out of your FinOps? It's just applying those practices to AI. AI for FinOps, on the other hand, that's where we're actually using AI as a tool to improve FinOps processes. So whether it's getting it into anomaly detection, whether it's into forecasting, it's actually using AI as a tool to support FinOps practices and processes rather than the side of how do we govern that AI solution. So FinOps for AI is a new word that's come around, but I think it's probably important that we look at why has it come around, really? I mean, we're seeing AI expanding, but about 2 years ago, AI was it's new, it's experimental. Organizations weren't really doing much with it. I think most people were planning holidays with it on a personal level. And more recently, people are more comfortable with it. So we're seeing that AI is it's moving out of that experimentation side, and we're moving from those pilots. We're trying to build it into customer workflows, business critical workflows, products. It's becoming more apparent in our everyday working life. And as such, organizations are now looking to scale it from those pilots to enterprise scale. And as soon as you start moving things into enterprise scale, those board leaders, those technical heads of, they're going to put more scrutiny and financial discipline onto actually what's the return on investment I'm actually getting from this solution? And that can be quite difficult. I mean, AI, I know I said it's been around for 2 years, but it's still new. We're still learning new things about it. The cost models are changing. The way that the billing file looks is different. Like I said, it now stretches across lots of different tech stacks and processes. And lots more people are becoming involved. Like you're going, HR are using it, your finance teams are using it, your engineers are using it. There's all different ways AI is coming about. So it's really important, actually, that we have processes and practices that can control it. So in the same way that when cloud came about and we used FinOps to help us control the costs there and get the best value from that solution, that's why FinOps and AI is becoming way more important in recent years.
So what happens if organizations start scaling their AI solutions without considering FinOps?
Yeah, so I think initially very little will appear wrong because when your AI experiments are small and costs are manageable, it's very easy for organizations to underestimate just how big it can be. And as adoption accelerates, tracking that explosion of AI services is where we see a lot of organizations definitely struggle. And navigating just that dynamic AI environment means that there's a much higher risk of runaway cost. We see teams defaulting often to very expensive models, for example, without actually considering the cost or alternatives for models that can do the job just as well. Forecasting also becomes extremely difficult, I think, and a lot of optimization opportunities can be missed already when models are being used without FinOps consideration. So that's also to say that it's actually really hard to demonstrate return of investment in AI as AI scales very fast, too fast. Another risk is that organization will start to lose confidence in their AI investment, not because the technology doesn't have value, but because they can't explain or control that cost. So it can become really, really dangerous, actually.
Yeah, and that's probably quite important as well because you don't necessarily see the return of the value like as soon as you start working on AI. It can take months for you to see that value. So if you can't explain it throughout that full life cycle and those different processes, it's going to be really difficult to build confidence that actually this investment is going to be worthwhile and you're going to get the maximum value from it. So it's really key to get FinOps teams in and explaining those different processes and when you're probably going to see value.
So a word that I came across recently in a FinOps article is tokenomics. Sounds like a made-up word, but I'd like to understand, what is it and what does it mean?
Well done on your correct pronunciation. It's a really difficult one to get in. So yeah, tokenomics, it's a discipline for helping us understand what you actually pay for when you use AI. The way you pay for AI is now in tokens. So anytime you use, ChatGPT or Claude, every time you put a response in and you get a response back, that actually requires tokens both in the input and the output. And so the whole point of tokenomics is that it helps you do three things. It helps you, one, to understand, what is the cost of the token. The token can change depending on the different providers. And then, so once you understand what the cost of it is, how many tokens are you actually using? So, every time you put that prompt in and then you scale it and more people adopting it. And then the third one, which is the really important part and the key element of tokenomics, is just the idea of, are you actually getting value back from what you've put in? So all the cost or the usage of your tokens, is there actually value coming back from it? So the whole aim of tokenomics is to help you to understand, what does your token cost? How many tokens are you using? And are you actually getting value back from it? And that can come in many different forms.
Okay. And the FinOps Foundation recently renamed their annual event. Isn't it named after tokenomics? And what's it called?
It's called Tokenomicon. Really, really nice word to say. But yeah, that just shows how important, though, that the whole concept of tokenomics is becoming. So actually, you'll see that the FinOps Foundation have also now created a new foundation off the back of it, which is called Tokenomics Foundation. And yes, as you said, their annual event will be Tokenomicon. But again, that it just shows actually there's a lot of thought going into it and just shows how important, getting this value back from AI is going to be and how much there's conversation around it. So it's not a simple feat.
We see the same with most technology. We've seen it with cloud. Economies of scale generally means that the price of tokens in this case will come down. So does FinOps really matter given that the cost of all of this technology is going to reduce over time?
You've fallen for the age-old trap. Same thing happened with cloud. Cloud is now cheap and accessible, so lots of people start to adopt it. I think we saw that, people who don't have FinOps, 30% of their cloud spend is wasted because people have over-resourced or they don't understand those cloud builds. The exact same thing will probably happen with AI. I mean, we're already seeing it. Lots of people are using AI just throughout the organization to send off, every email they've got, they'll send it back with an AI response. I'm even seeing people use it, like when they're responding to a team message, they just use AI for that. So the more accessible AI becomes and the cheaper it becomes, the more people who will start to adopt AI. And, that's great that people are adopting AI, but are you actually getting the value out of it? So as more people start to use it, the cost will actually increase because more people are adopting it. So whilst it may be cheaper, more people are using it. But are you actually getting the value and the best use case out of that AI usage? And again, that's where tokenomics could come in, because you can start to look at how many tokens am I using? Is this output actually beneficial? Now, that output might not necessarily be a financial return, but are we getting a good response?
Does that mean that FinOps practices in general only apply to solutions once they're live and in production, or is it prior to that?
That is actually one of the biggest misconceptions about FinOps for AI. It's my belief that FinOps for AI should actually start long before deployment and continue long after that as well. And the challenge is that if we only start getting involved before AI goes live, a lot of the most critical decisions are already made. And, for example, models could have been selected already, vendors could have been selected, or, the architecture could have been designed and locked in already. And these are all commitments that will influence cost in a very long term. As FinOps practitioner, we have the ability to give data-driven decisions to a lot of stakeholders and show clear trade-offs before any decisions are even made. And basically that reduces the risk of locking organizations into some commercially unsustainable solutions in the long term. And that's exactly why we're starting to see a shift in FinOps from being just a reporting function to being almost like a strategic capability for big organizations. And ultimately, what we are there to do is to help them make better investment decisions as well.
And where does lifecycle management for large language models for AI systems fit into all of this?
Every stage of the AI lifecycle presents a completely different financial, technical, or even business decision that has to be made. So during the discovery phase of a lot of these technology being in production and going live, organizations have to first decide basically which use cases are even worth pursuing, and whether their expected value are actually justified. Whether the expected value actually justify the investment. So the next stage, I suppose, is the design and build stage. And that's when a lot of the decisions around models, architecture, prompt engineering are extremely important, because these are the ones that can dramatically affect the long-term cost implications and performance of their applications. And then we go into, after deployment. So after deployment, the attention shifts into adoption. How we can optimize your AI applications, whether it's operationally efficient, and eventually provide justifying and proving that there is business value coming out of these applications. So I definitely think that FinOps is going to be a key player in shaping how that looks and connecting these decisions together so that we can ensure organizations are not just simply managing the cost, but managing the value as well.
I think there's something else that's really important in that area, especially with that life cycle, is actually looking at, model depreciation and when models are going to be around or not. I think you've done a lot of work in this area, haven't you, Charmaine?
Yeah, I have. So one of the, challenging thing, and you could say it's quite interesting as well, actually, is the AI lifecycle is very rapid. When we talk about AI lifecycle, we're talking about the actual development, depreciation, deprecation, and retirement of these AI models. So that life cycle itself is very rapid, and it changes, it varies from vendor to vendor. So tracking that can be quite a nightmare sometimes, especially when, vendors aren't necessarily promoting and shouting on the top of their lungs, when their models are quite old and, they have to have a bit of a refresh. But that is very critical to organizations because a lot of application hinges on the accuracy of models. And when you have models being deprecated very frequently, teams basically have to go back to the drawing board every single time to come up with a new architecture, a new design solution. And as FinOps practitioner, our job is to be there proactively very early on and be able to inform engineers and business stakeholders alike whether that change is coming and recommend good alternatives for, to accommodate these life cycles.
I think that's really important as well, especially because we work with quite highly regulated industries. So getting models approved and through the kind of procurement systems, that's why it's really important so you can start thinking about these, basically admin tasks around and governance tasks to actually get these models available. Because if you don't have a model lifecycle management process, and then suddenly your model is either going to be 60 times more in price, or it's just not going to be available. I think that's the really important part of what we're seeing now in the FinOps discipline around shifting left. The way that we're seeing where FinOps is coming in is kind of two different layers. There's the strategic layer. So if we're bringing FinOps more into those senior level decisions, those boards, being able to give that advice on both actually where is AI giving value, but also where AI could give value, or even just any of your technology investments. So it's really important actually to see FinOps one shift left, but also up into those senior conversations. But then it can also help at an operational level. So actually, as you're saying, like when you've got those decisions before you go to deployment, can FinOps support you into thinking about good design decisions, what those model considerations are, what's going to be available in terms of resources and allocation. All of these things, FinOps helps you to think about these decisions and these key critical concepts. So it's really important actually that we shift FinOps left. And when I say FinOps, I don't just mean like a FinOps team. I mean actually just the FinOps mindset of good design, thinking strategically. And that's how it's going to move forward, I see. If you haven't thought about this and you haven't brought your FinOps team in to bring this evidence or advice in, you're suddenly not going to have your AI solution, or it's going to start outperform or performing badly.
So what's the biggest mindset shift that organizations need to make in order to manage AI successfully, in your opinion?
FinOps typically or traditionally has been more about the solution goes in, the FinOps team look at the cost, and then they report it back to you. As we're seeing quite critically, some of these decisions need to be made before a solution goes live. So we need to be more proactive, we need to be shifting left, we need to be getting FinOps teams in earlier and thinking about some of these larger solution designs rather than optimizing and being reactive. And I think, as Charmaine has clearly called out, we need to be thinking about AI and all of our other software, so cloud, whether it's SaaS solutions. These now need to be thought about from a lifecycle perspective rather than just a one-off deployment. So I think that's going to be the biggest change for FinOps teams, is to be more involved at earlier stages and thinking about the whole lifecycle rather than focusing on smaller elements of kind of the post-deployment stage of things. And for that to really work, we're going to have to see a lot more collaboration across the teams. AI is quite a complicated system and people are using it in lots of different ways. So it's really going to need FinOps teams, or however way you want to set up your FinOps organization, is they need to be working more closely with those users. So yeah, the earlier FinOps teams can get in, the more proactive they can be and thinking about the whole life cycle.
Okay. I think we're going to leave it there. So thank you again for coming in. And thank you for listening. Please join us again for the next episode. And don't forget to hit subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe now to never miss another episode of Cortex Signals.